Every night at the same hours, he'd drive around the city in his yellow taxi, silently transporting passengers, never talking much to anyone. He'd maintained the same routine for 8 years. But that night, the man who got into his taxi was different. He had a gun, he had a plan, and he had no idea who Mike really was. 3 hours later, when the entire police station stood up, everyone would be shocked. Before we begin this incredible story of hidden identity and lethal skills, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be told, hit that subscribe button. Because some warriors never truly retire. They just change their battlefield. The streets of Phoenix, Arizona never truly slept, but they grew quieter after midnight. That's when Michael Mike Torres preferred to work. At 62 years old, with silver hair and weathered hands, he'd been driving the same yellow cab for the past 8 years. Taxi number 4, A7829, had become his second home. Mike had perfected the art of being invisible. He knew which neighborhoods to avoid, which streets paid the best fares, and most importantly, how to blend into the background of a city that never really looked at its taxi drivers. He was polite but distant, professional but forgettable. "Where to?" he'd ask in his gravelly voice, eyes always scanning the rearview mirror. Downtown, or the airport, or just drive around. The destinations varied, but Mike's demeanor never changed. Quiet efficiency, no small talk unless the passenger initiated it, no questions about their business. What his passengers didn't know was that Mike's scanning wasn't just casual observation. Every mirror check was a tactical assessment. Every route he chose considered multiple exit strategies. Every conversation was filtered through decades of training that had nothing to do with driving taxis. The night shift suited him. Fewer people meant fewer complications. The darkness provided cover, and the steady rhythm of pickups and drop-offs helped quiet the memories that still visited him in his sleep. Sarah Chen had seen Mike around the precinct area many times. He was a regular fixture, waiting outside the 24-hour diner where off-duty cops grabbed coffee. She'd always assumed he was just another old-timer trying to make ends meet. Polite, reliable, invisible. She had no idea that the quiet taxi driver had once led Delta Force operations in places that didn't appear on any public map. Mike had good reasons for choosing invisibility. After 30 years of military service, the last thing he wanted was attention. The pension was decent, but driving nights gave him purpose without the weight of command. No lives depending on his split-second decisions. No missions that couldn't be discussed with anyone who didn't have the same security clearance. 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, when his carefully constructed anonymity was about to be shattered. Mike was parked outside the Greyhound station when his radio crackled. Car 829. Pick up at the corner of 7th and Van Buren. Passenger's name is Rodriguez. Copy that. Dispatch, on my way. The pickup location was in a rough part of downtown Phoenix. Mike had been there countless times. It was where people needed rides when they couldn't afford to be particular about their transportation. He pulled up to the corner and saw a man in a dark hoodie waving him down. "You Rodriguez?" Mike asked as the man approached the passenger side. "Yeah, that's me. Get in and drive." Something in the man's tone made Mike pause. In 8 years of driving taxi, he developed an instinct for reading passengers. Rodriguez was nervous, agitated, and trying too hard to appear casual. Mike's training kicked in automatically. Threat assessment, exit routes, positioning, all done unconsciously while maintaining his normal routine. Rodriguez slid into the back seat and immediately hunched down. "Just drive around for a while. I'll tell you where to go." "Meter's running," Mike said, putting the car in gear. As they drove through the quiet streets, Mike observed Rodriguez in his rearview mirror. The man kept checking his phone, looking over his shoulder, and most concerning, he had an obvious bulge under his left arm. Mike had seen enough concealed weapons to recognize one instantly. "You okay back there?" Mike asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Mind your own business, old man. Just drive." Mike's jaw tightened slightly. In his previous life, being called old man in that tone would have been a mistake. But he was just a taxi driver now. He was supposed to be invisible. 20 minutes into the ride, Rodriguez's phone rang. "Yeah, it's me," Rodriguez answered, his voice tense. "I'm mobile. Give me the address." Mike listened carefully while maintaining his driving. Years of intelligence gathering had taught him to process multiple information streams simultaneously. "Okay, I'll be there in 15. And Garcia, this better work or we're all dead." Rodriguez hung up and leaned forward. "Change of plans. Take me to the First National Bank building and step on it." Mike's internal alarms were now screaming. Bank building, late night, agitated passenger with a weapon, phone call about a plan that could get people killed. This wasn't just a ride anymore. "Which entrance?" Mike asked, already knowing this was headed somewhere dangerous. "Back entrance, and when we get there, you're not leaving." Mike's hands remained steady on the wheel, but his mind was racing. Rodriguez wasn't just nervous, he was part of something bigger. And now, Mike was about to become an unwilling participant. "Look, buddy, I just drive taxi. I don't want any trouble." Rodriguez pulled his jacket back, revealing a Glock 19. "You'll do what I say, or you'll be one sorry old man." Mike glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting Rodriguez's eyes. For just a moment, something passed between them. Rodriguez saw something in Mike's expression that made him shift uncomfortably. "I said drive, old man." Mike nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." But inside, after 8 years of dormancy, something very dangerous was waking up. The First National Bank building loomed against the Phoenix skyline, its glass facade reflecting the city's scattered lights. Mike pulled into the back alley as instructed, his mind automatically cataloging escape routes, sightlines, and potential threats. 2 more men emerged from the shadows, both armed, both with the jumpy energy of people about to do something stupid. "About time," one of them said, opening the taxi door. "You, Garcia." "Rodriguez," the passenger corrected, stepping out. "Garcia's waiting upstairs." The second man looked at Mike through the driver's window. "What about the cabbie?" "He's coming with us. Insurance." Mike felt familiar ice settle in his stomach, hostage situations. He'd been on both sides of them during his military career. This was not going to end well for someone. "Look, gentlemen," Mike said, raising his hands peacefully, "I'm just trying to make a living. I don't see nothing. I don't hear nothing. Just let me go." The first man laughed. "Sure, Grandpa, right after we finish our business." They marched Mike into the building through a service entrance. Someone had already disabled the security system. This was planned, coordinated. Mike's tactical mind automatically assessed the situation while maintaining his frightened civilian facade. 3 visible suspects, likely more upstairs, professional enough to bypass security, amateur enough to bring a hostage. Motivated by money, not ideology. That made them both predictable and dangerous. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Mike noticed the button Rodriguez pushed. Accounting department. This wasn't a bank robbery. This was something more sophisticated. "Here's how this works, old man," Rodriguez said, pressing the gun into Mike's back. "You sit in the corner, you keep your mouth shut, and you pray we don't have to clean up any loose ends." Mike nodded, playing the terrified senior citizen. "Please, I have grandchildren." "Then you'll want to see them again." The elevator opened onto a floor of cubicles and offices. 4 more men were waiting, along with a woman in business attire who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Garcia," Rodriguez called out. A man in his 40s stepped forward. "Rodriguez. Good. And you brought a friend." "Taxi driver. He's our way out when we're done." Garcia studied Mike with cold eyes. "He's seen our faces. We'll deal with that later. Right now we have work to do." Mike remained silent, but his mind was working furiously. 7 suspects total, at least 4 weapons visible, 1 civilian hostage besides himself. This was clearly an inside job. The woman in business attire was probably the bank employee who'd provided access. "Maria, you're sure about the transfer protocols?" Garcia asked the woman. "Yes, but I'm telling you, this is insane. When they trace this back, they won't, because it's going to look like an outside hack. That's why we need you to make the transfers from your workstation." Mike understood now. This wasn't a robbery. It was cyber theft with insider assistance. They were going to steal money electronically and make it look like a hack. Sophisticated. Professional. The kind of operation that required months of planning, which made it all the more dangerous for witnesses. Garcia noticed Mike listening. "You understand what you're hearing, old man?" Mike looked up with what he hoped was confused fear. "I don't understand any of this computer stuff." "Good, keep it that way." But Mike understood everything, and he was starting to formulate a plan. For the next hour, Mike sat in a corner chair, watching the operation unfold. The suspects were professional, but not military. They knew enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be truly careful. Garcia supervised while Maria reluctantly initiated a series of electronic transfers. The other men provided security, but their discipline was poor. They were relaxed, confident, treating this like a sure thing. Mike counted exits, weapons, and timing. His assessment: 7 suspects with handguns, 1 civilian hostage, multiple escape routes, and a 5-minute window before bank security protocols would detect the transfers. Most importantly, these men had no idea who they were dealing with. "How much longer?" Rodriguez asked, nervously checking his watch. 10 minutes, Garcia replied. "The transfers have to be staggered to avoid detection." Mike shifted in his chair, and every head turned toward him. "Sorry, just getting stiff," he said apologetically. "Sit still, old man," Rodriguez snapped. Mike nodded submissively, but his shift had allowed him to palate the tactical layout of the room. 3 men near the windows, 2 by the elevator. Garcia and Rodriguez with Maria at the computer station. His phone buzzed, a text message. Rodriguez grabbed it before Mike could react. "Who's texting you at 1 a.m.? Mike looked at the screen. "My daughter. She worries when I work late." The text read, "Dad, are you okay? You didn't check in." "Answer it," Rodriguez ordered. "Tell her you're fine." Mike typed slowly, "All good. Just busy night." What Rodriguez didn't know was that Mike had just sent a coded message. Busy night was a phrase he'd arranged with his daughter years ago. It meant he was in danger and needed help. His daughter, Captain Lisa Torres, U.S. Army Intelligence, would understand immediately. "Good," Rodriguez said, handing the phone back. "No more interruptions." Mike pocketed the phone and continued his charade, but now he had backup coming. The question was whether he could keep everyone alive until it arrived. Garcia looked up from the computer. "We're almost done. Final transfers processing." "Finally," Rodriguez muttered. "I'll be glad to get out of this town." Mike made his move. "Can I use the bathroom?" "I'm an old man and—" "No," Garcia said firmly. "You wait." "Please, it's urgent." "He's not going anywhere," Rodriguez said. "There's a bathroom right over there. Take him, but watch him close." One of the men by the window, a young guy with face tattoos, gestured with his gun. "Come on, Grandpa, make it quick." Mike shuffled toward the bathroom, maintaining his frail old man act. But as they passed the water cooler, he stopped. "Sorry, I'm really thirsty. This stress, just hurry up," the young man said impatiently. Mike reached for a paper cup, and in one fluid motion, his 8 years of retirement evaporated. His left hand grabbed the gunman's wrist, controlling the weapon. His right hand drove the paper cup dispenser's edge into the man's throat. The gunman dropped instantly, unconscious. Mike caught the falling gun and spun toward the room. 7 suspects became 6 in under 3 seconds. "Nobody move," he commanded, his voice no longer that of a frightened old man. The transformation was instantaneous. Mike's posture straightened, his eyes sharpened, his grip on the weapon was professional, practiced, deadly. Garcia stared in shock. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone you should have left alone," Mike replied calmly. "Drop your weapons, now." Mike's voice carried the authority of 3 decades of command. Rodriguez raised his gun. "You're outnumbered, old man." "Not really." Mike's shot took Rodriguez in the shoulder, spinning him around. The sound echoed through the office like thunder. "Next one's center mass," Mike announced. "Your choice." 3 guns clattered to the floor. Mike kicked them away while maintaining his position of advantage. "You," he said to Garcia, "step away from the computer. Maria, cancel those transfers." "You can't stop this," Garcia snarled, clutching his wounded shoulder. "Watch me." Mike's training had taken over completely. Threat assessment, target prioritization, tactical positioning, 30 years of Delta Force operations compressed into moments of pure professionalism. Maria's hands shook as she tried to cancel the transfers. I can't. The system's locked me out. Then we wait for the police. Garcia laughed bitterly. The police? By the time they get here, we'll be gone and you'll be dead. Mike smiled coldly. The police are already here. As if on cue, the elevator dinged, but instead of police, 2 more armed men stepped out. Back up, Garcia said triumphantly. Mike's smile didn't waver. Mine. The elevator doors opened again. This time, it was Phoenix PD SWAT, followed by a woman in military dress uniform. Dad, Captain Lisa Torres called out. All secure, sweetheart, Mike replied, still covering the suspects. The SWAT team quickly secured the scene while Lisa approached her father. Michael Torres, she said officially, thank you for your assistance. Detective Chen was among the responding officers. She stared at Mike in amazement. You're the taxi driver. Was, Mike corrected. Tonight, I was something else. Garcia, now in handcuffs, looked confused. Who is this guy? Lisa Torres stepped forward. Colonel Michael Torres, U.S. Army Special Operations Command, retired. 30 years of service, including 15 years with Delta Force, 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, classified operations in 7 countries. Delta Force? Rodriguez whispered. Among other things, Mike said quietly. 2 hours later, Mike sat in the Phoenix Police Department conference room, still wearing his taxi driver's jacket. The suspects were booked, the money transfers had been stopped, and the FBI was taking over the investigation. Detective Chen sat across from him, still processing what she'd witnessed. Colonel Torres, she began. Just Mike, he corrected. I've been retired for 8 years. Mike, then. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? I mean, you've been driving taxi in our district for years. Mike shrugged. I didn't want to be defined by what I used to do. I wanted to be judged by what I was doing. But you were just invisible. That was the point. After 30 years of high-stakes operations, I needed normal. I needed quiet. Driving taxi gave me that. Captain Torres entered the room. Dad, we need to talk. Mike looked at his daughter with pride. You did good tonight, Lisa. That code phrase system worked perfectly. It's not about tonight, Dad. It's about what happens next. Detective Chen stood. I'll give you some privacy. When they were alone, Lisa sat beside her father. Dad, this is going to be all over the news. Decorated war hero stops bank heist while driving taxi. Your quiet retirement is over. Mike nodded thoughtfully. I figured as much. The Department of Homeland Security wants to debrief you. The FBI has questions, and the media is already asking about the mystery colonel. And I think you should consider consulting. Your skills are too valuable to waste on taxi driving. Mike smiled. Sweetheart, I wasn't wasting them. I was using them differently. Do you know how many drunk college kids I've gotten home safely? How many late-shift nurses I've driven through dangerous neighborhoods? How many elderly people I've helped with their groceries? Dad, I'm not saying tonight wasn't important, but service takes many forms. Lisa studied her father's face. Are you saying you want to go back to driving taxi? I'm saying I want to choose my own mission now, and maybe that mission is bigger than just driving. The next morning, Mike stood in the taxi company's office, turning in his keys and radio. Mike, you don't have to do this, said Tony, the dispatcher who'd worked with him for 8 years. So what if you're some kind of war hero? You're still the best driver we've got. Thanks, Tony, but things have changed. The news people are saying you saved millions of dollars last night. Mike smiled. I saved people, Tony. The money was just a bonus. As he walked out of the taxi company, Mike's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Torres. Colonel Torres, this is Director Harrison from the FBI. We'd like to discuss a consulting position. I'm listening. We need someone with your skills for a special task force. Counterterrorism operations, hostage situations, training scenarios. The pay is excellent, and you'd have significant operational freedom. Mike considered the offer. What kind of hours? Flexible. We understand you value your privacy. I'll think about it. Colonel, with respect, we need someone who can handle situations like last night. Someone who can think fast, act decisively, and keep innocent people safe. Mike looked back at the taxi company. Director Harrison, I've been doing that for 8 years. I just haven't been shooting anyone. Sir? I'll call you back. Mike hung up and walked toward his personal car. As he drove home, he thought about his daughter's words. His skills were valuable. But value wasn't just about combat operations. That evening, Mike received a call from Detective Chen. Mike, I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. What's on your mind? I've been thinking about what you said, about service taking many forms. I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. Would you consider teaching? We have a lot of young officers who could benefit from your experience. Not just the tactical stuff, but the situational awareness, the people skills, the decision-making under pressure. Mike smiled. You know, Detective, that's the first offer I've gotten today that sounds interesting. Really? Really? When do we start? 3 months later, Mike stood in front of a classroom of Phoenix Police Academy recruits. He wasn't wearing a uniform or carrying a weapon. He was just Mike Torres, instructor. How many of you think you know what a dangerous situation looks like? He asked the class. Every hand went up. Wrong, Mike said simply. Danger doesn't announce itself. It sits in the back of your taxi and makes small talk. It asks for directions. It says please and thank you while planning to hurt people. One recruit raised her hand. Sir, how do you tell the difference? Experience, observation, and understanding that your job isn't to look for trouble. It's to recognize it when it finds you. Mike clicked to the next slide, showing a photo of his taxi. For 8 years, I drove this cab. I thought I was retired from protecting people. But it turns out I was just protecting them differently. Another recruit asked, Sir, is it true you took down 7 armed suspects by yourself? No, Mike said. I neutralized immediate threats and created a tactical advantage until backup arrived. There's a difference between heroics and professionalism. After class, Detective Chen found Mike in his office. How's the teaching going? Good. These kids are smart. They just need to understand that being a cop isn't about being a warrior. It's about being a guardian. And how's civilian life treating you? Mike laughed. Chen, I've been a civilian for 8 years. I just had a more interesting night at work. Any regrets about giving up the taxi? Mike considered the question. Number, but I miss the simplicity. There's something honest about driving people where they need to go. Maybe you can do both. Maybe. 6 months after the bank incident, Mike received an unexpected visitor. Maria, the bank employee who'd been coerced into helping the criminals, stood in his office doorway. Mr. Torres, I don't know if you remember me. I remember. How are you, Maria? Better. I wanted to thank you. Not just for that night, but for what you said to the FBI about me. Mike had testified that Maria was a victim, not a willing participant. Her cooperation had been coerced through threats to her family. I told them the truth. You were in an impossible situation. The bank gave me a new position, security consultant. They said someone with my experience understanding vulnerabilities would be valuable. Mike smiled. Second chances, they're important. Mr. Torres, I also wanted to ask you something. My nephew is applying to the police academy. He's a good kid, but he's had some rough patches. Would you be willing to meet with him? Of course. After Maria left, Mike sat at his desk, thinking about second chances. His own second chance had come in the form of a yellow taxi. For 8 years, he'd been anonymous, invisible, forgotten, and it had been exactly what he'd needed. Now he had a third chance. Teaching. Sharing what he'd learned not just in the military but in the years since. How to serve without seeking recognition. How to find purpose in ordinary work. How to be ready for extraordinary moments. His phone rang. Lisa. Dad, I'm in Phoenix for a conference. Want to grab dinner? Sure. Pick me up at the academy. Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you for the taxi driving, for the teaching, for all of it. Mike smiled. Thanks, sweetheart. I'm proud of you too. That evening as they drove to dinner, Lisa asked, "Do you ever miss it? The action? The adrenaline?" Mike looked out the window at the Phoenix streets he'd driven for 8 years. "You know what I miss? The quiet, the routine, the feeling that I was helping people in a simple, honest way. But you're still helping people. Different people, different problems. But yeah, I guess I am. Any regrets?" Mike thought about the question. "Only one. I regret that it took a gun to my head to remind me who I was." "Who you were?" "Number who I am. I'm not just a former soldier or a taxi driver or a teacher. I'm someone who serves. The job doesn't matter. The service does." A year after the bank incident, Mike received a letter from the Phoenix Police Department. Crime in his old taxi district had dropped 23% since he'd started teaching tactical awareness to patrol officers. His methods, combining military precision with civilian sensibility, had created a new standard for police training. But Mike's proudest moment came when Tony, his old taxi dispatcher, called. "Mike, you've got to see this. One of our new drivers, kid named Roberto, stopped a kidnapping last week. Used some kind of tactical thinking, just like you taught him." Mike had never taught Roberto anything, but somehow his example had spread. How'd he know what to do? He said he learned it from watching you, how you always paid attention, how you positioned your car, how you read people. He said you taught him that driving taxi wasn't just about transportation, it was about protecting the community. Mike smiled. "Send Roberto my congratulations." "I will. And Mike? The company wants to put a plaque in the office in honor of Mike Torres, who showed us that heroes come in many forms." "No plaque, Tony. Just tell your drivers to keep their eyes open and their passengers safe." "Will do." After hanging up, Mike sat in his office, grading papers from his latest class of police recruits. One essay caught his attention. "What I Learned from Colonel Torres" by Officer Sarah Martinez. "Before his class, I thought being a cop meant being tough. Colonel Torres taught me that being a cop means being aware. He showed us that strength isn't about intimidation, it's about preparation. That a heroism isn't about glory, it's about service. He proved that you can serve your community just as effectively driving a taxi as leading a military operation. The badge doesn't make you a protector. The commitment does." Mike smiled and wrote in the margin, "A plus. Now, go protect people." Mike Torres never returned to driving taxi full-time, but he never forgot its lessons. Every few months, he'd pick up a shift with his old company, driving the night routes through neighborhoods that needed someone watching over them. His story became legend in Phoenix law enforcement circles, not because he'd stopped a bank heist, but because he'd shown that service has many faces, that warriors can be teachers, that heroes can be invisible. The taxi company kept his old radio number, 829, as a reminder. New drivers would ask about it, and Tony would tell them the story of the driver who was more than he seemed. "He taught us that your job title doesn't define your mission," Tony would say. "Your character does." Mike continues to teach at the Phoenix Police Academy. His classes are always full, not just with recruits, but with veteran officers who want to understand how to serve without seeking recognition. When people ask him about the night that changed everything, Mike always corrects them. "It didn't change anything," he says. "It just reminded me of something I'd temporarily forgotten, that once you commit to protecting people, you never really stop. You just find new ways to do it." His taxi license still sits in his wallet, expired but treasured. A reminder that heroism isn't about the uniform you wear or the weapons you carry. It's about the commitment you make to serve others, regardless of whether anyone notices. Mike Torres drove taxi for 8 years. He taught police tactics for 5. He served in the military for 30. But he's been a protector his entire life. Some people become famous for their service. Others become invisible. And a rare few understand that both are just different ways of doing the same job. So the next time you see a taxi driver, a teacher, or someone in any ordinary job, remember Colonel Mike Torres. Heroes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just pick you up when you need a ride, teach you when you need to learn, and protect you when you need protection. Have you ever met someone like Mike? Someone whose humble exterior hid extraordinary capabilities? Share their story in the comments, and if you believe these stories of quiet heroism deserve to be told, subscribe to Hidden Heroes. Because the most powerful protection often comes from those who serve without seeking recognition. Remember, the person driving your taxi might be the same person who could save your life. We just don't see them clearly until the moment their true calling can no longer be hidden.